Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. In today's episode, we have a gunman in Texas that tried to go in and shoot up a summer camp school, was ultimately killed by police, and this story 100% cuts against the Democrats and the progressive left's narrative. Now, before we jump into this, as always, if you want to join us here at the Bald Brad Show or heck support a conservative, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share this link with your friends and family all over social media. With that being said, we're going to start with a couple clips here. The first one's going to be students and eyewitnesses of what took place, and then we're going to hear from the police department itself, and then we'll roll into kind of the details of everything after that. With that, let's jump into it.
And disbelief.
It's just unfortunate. This is the world we're in.
Another shooting in another place. Kids are supposed to have fun.
We can't send our kids to camp. We can't. They're not safe at school. They're not safe anywhere.
Summer camps at the Duncanville Fieldhouse were just beginning when chaos unfolded.
We was thinking it was a drill or something, and our director pushed us into the corner. And as soon as she got the door shut, we heard at least 7 to 8 rounds going off.
After police confronted and shot a gunman inside, children were bused to the nearby rec center as parents waited anxiously to hug them. The Rogers family paused to pray. 18-year-old Naomi was helping out with the youngest campers, ages 4 to 6.
The shooter actually came to our door, and he said that if we didn't let him see who he wanted to see, that he was going to shoot the place up. And he shot at the glass door, and the glass started to fall. And I just started to pray then, because that's all I could do. That's all I thought about.
She and others tried to focus on keeping the little ones calm.
There were a good 6 other adults, 7 maybe. We held it up. We did what we had to do, and a lot of them were willing to give up their lives for these kids, and I'm glad I know them.
It just should not be something that is so matter of fact and normal. This is not normal. It's just not.
Not normal, but now all too common, as more parents are left wondering how to make their children feel safe again.
That's the challenge. That's what we're getting ready to go do now. Go talk to our kids and explain to them that this is the day we live in, and make sure that, this traumatic experience, that they're okay.
So obviously tragic. You never want kids to go through this. And before we jump into the next video, I actually do want to just mention something really quick, is that one of the mothers said this was normal and then said the act of it is not normal. And honestly, I disagree with a portion of that statement, saying this whole mass shooting going into schools and this basically heinous crime taking place is normal, because statistically it is not normal whatsoever. It's actually an extreme outlier. But because the media is pushing certain lies, the left that have infiltrated the mainstream media is pushing certain lies, these certain narratives have been now absorbed by certain people, whether it's the suburbs or certain community members, to believe that these mass shootings that are taking place in schools, or shootings in general taking place in schools, is a normal thing, which again, it is not even close to being normal. And then the portion that I do agree with is her saying that literally this is not normal. It's a weird thing to happen. It's not an okay thing to happen. But again, that's not going to stop the mainstream media from doing damage to our society by pushing that type of narrative. Now, here we have Duncanville police. No children injured, no staff injured during confrontation at Dallas sports camp. When we get into this, you're going to see the difference what took place in Duncanville, or Duncanville, however you want to pronounce it, compared to Uvalde on the police going in. And the response time is impeccable by these police officers. And when everything is done correctly on how it's supposed to go, nobody dies. But again, this isn't going to be pushed by the mainstream media as much as it was for Uvalde, because of everything that took place and it was done right. And again, all the situations and details that took place there cut against their narrative. Let's go ahead and watch this.
Upon entering the building, they quickly located and exchanged gunfire with a suspect who was armed with a handgun. The suspect was wounded during the exchange of fire. Officers immediately provided first aid on scene, and the suspect was transported to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced deceased. Our Duncanville Mobile Intensive Care Unit provided transport to Central Methodist. On today, a summer camp was taking place at the Fieldhouse, which has a daily average of around 250 campers, ages ranging from 4 to 14. No child, no staff member, nor any officers were injured during this incident.
So as you've seen, based on what Duncanville Police Department said, it cuts against the left's narrative for a few reasons. First of which, it said that this person that's on screen now had a handgun, which goes against the narrative that AR-15s are the weapons of choice with mass shootings and, yada, yada, yada. Which if you look at the data for mass shootings, majority of mass shootings are committed with handguns rather than the AR-15. So this is just something they pull out of thin air just to try to push a narrative because the gun looks scary. Furthermore, this cuts against the left's narrative because they always talk about how it's a white man, and they'll push that aspect of white men killing a bunch of children or killing a bunch of black people or whatever it may be. But now you have a black person here. Police have identified 42-year-old Brandon Keith Ned of Dallas, Texas as the shooter and have not yet determined a possible motive for the shooting. So this is just a second reason as to why they're not going to cover this all over the news night and day like you saw with Uvalde. Now, the other thing we have going on here, which is why they're not going to cover, is the police department. From what I heard, again, these numbers could change. I heard they responded in roughly 2 minutes to get on that scene where the active shooting was taking place. And they didn't stop. They didn't do anything. They just went in like they were supposed to, how they were trained, and took out the target. So when everything is done correctly, when the staff of the school site does things correctly, locks things down, take the kids out of the way of the path of a shooter, on the sides of the classroom, get out of the way of windows, all sorts of things. When you protect them, lock your doors, you have the police department on scene. They arrive swiftly, quickly, annihilate the target. Nobody has to die and everybody can move forward. Obviously, it's not an ideal situation, but again, it's just another reason when the police department are doing their jobs and everything goes well, it's not going to be on mainstream media. They want to put that fear factor out there, just like we covered months and months ago when you had CNN technical director Charlie Chester being exposed by Project Veritas saying fear sells. This is what the media wants. This is this type of stories, this feel good story, not saying the shooting itself was feel good, but the police doing their job, everybody surviving, feel good story. This is the type of stuff they don't want to put out there all over their networks. They'll just stick to it, embed it on their sites where you got to go digging for it. Police say they started receiving calls at 8:43 a.m. that a man had fired shots at a Duncanville Fieldhouse where a summer camp with roughly 250 children is housed. 2 minutes later, officers arrived at the scene and neutralized the shooter after a summer school staffer engaged with the shooter as kids were locked down. 2 minutes is impeccable time, folks. And you notice there was no waiting around. There was nothing like we saw in Uvalde. They went in and neutralized the target like they're trained to do and how they are supposed to do when there is an active shooter. As a teacher, I go through active shooter trainings every single year. And I'm always told that the police are not going to wait. They're going to just rush in, neutralize the target, and do everything they need to do. Very different than what we're seeing and saw in Uvalde. The camp counselor confronted the suspected gunman in the lobby of the school as the children were ushered by staff to an area behind locked doors where the gunman could not enter. Quote, he did fire one round inside the classroom where there were children inside. Fortunately, no one was injured. So we're going to see, folks, if the mainstream media picks up on this and actually pushes good narratives of, hey, this is why we need to fund the police department. This is why the police need more training. This is what happens when they are trained. You can neutralize a suspect in under 3 minutes from the time he started engaging. What I want to point out, though, is a lot can go down in 3 minutes. And this is my problem as an educator, is that I want to be able to protect myself from the time that shooting starts, and as well as my children, my students, to the point of when the police arrived. 3 minutes is like a lifetime when you're in a shootout. So this whole thing of like, even though it's impeccable time, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it may be, that's a very long time for somebody just to ring off a bunch of rounds. So that's all I have to say about that. Let me know what you think about this whole thing in the comments. I'm sure a lot of us have very different opinions on what type of training should take place, if teachers should have firearms, if we need more school resources, if we need more school funding. Those are the types of things I'm interested in hearing from all of you. And as always, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, share this link with your friends and family all over social media. And with that being said, folks, I will see you later here on The Bold Brat Show.